Hi, I'm Darley Newman, and we're in Albany, New York. We're exploring New York's Empire State Trail with locals as our guides. Welcome to Travels with Darley.
As a New Yorker, it's quite a relief sometimes to get out of the city, especially as a gal who loves the great outdoors. So I was excited to hear about a trail that starts in Manhattan, in Battery Park City, and can take you all the way to the Canadian border. The Empire State Trail traverses 750 miles. This multi-use trail welcomes hikers, bikers, leisurely walkers, and has tons of history, culture, cuisine, and craft beer along the route. I'm following the trail starting in Buffalo and ending this journey in the beautiful Hudson Valley, not far from New York City. On this first part of the trail from Buffalo to Albany, I'm traveling alongside much of the historic Erie Canal, an engineering feat completed in 1825, which transformed New York City into a major seaport, opened up the Midwest, and gave rise to cities and towns like Albany, Syracuse, Buffalo, and Rochester. From Buffalo Harbor State Park, I'm traveling about a half-hour south to Lockport, to the Flight of 5 Locks, and walking down the Empire State Trail along the Erie Canal for an unusual tour.
We're on the Empire State Trail now.
You are on the Empire Trail, and this is Lockport. And of course, it leads up to the Flight of 5 and the locks 34 and 35.
Lockport's name comes from this set of Erie Canal locks, lock numbers 34 and 35, the only double set of locks on the Erie Canal. They were constructed so that canal barges could navigate the 60-foot rise in elevation through a series of 5 locks. Before we explore the Flight of 5 Locks, we're first taking an underground boat ride.
So I hear this cave is haunted?
It is. It is.
We're exploring a historic water power tunnel whose water provided energy to several industries, helping to put Lockport on the map during the Industrial Revolution. Tom Callahan explains.
Lockport was known as the city of smokeless power. They used every bit of excess water that went around Lockport to use it for mechanical power back in the 1800s and early 1900s. Obviously, they were very successful because they had over 3,000 people employed. Over 200 turbines were connected to the various tunnels on both sides, making mechanical power. And this really was the thrust of the city of Lockport being in the forefront of the Industrial Revolution.
Lockport was a powerful city.
It was a city of smokeless power and utilizing steam power to heat homes and buildings and again, steam, using steam and to the entire community.
The system was the brainchild of Birdsall Hawley Jr., a friend of Thomas Edison, who was also quite the inventor. He patented 150 inventions and created pressurized water systems.
Water under pressure to homes for water out of a tap, fire hydrants, and entire community fire systems.
Just the ingenuity it took to conceive this.
Right, conceived in the 1830s, built in the 1850s.
Above ground, I'm enjoying another unique experience at the Flight of 5 Locks.
So in 1825, the 2 sets of 5 locks opened here, and the canal was so busy that immediately they needed to enlarge it. So what you are in right now is the first enlargement, and this lock opened in 1842. This was the westbound set of locks, and on the other side of the stones here was an eastbound set. What you're standing in is a replica boat that was on the canal in the early 1800s. It's called a Durham boat.
Because Lockport was such a busy thruway, there would have been long wait times, boat traffic jams, at the Flight of 5.
Prior to this canal opening, boats to get to the center of the country had to go down around Florida and up the Mississippi. So this was a shorter passage and a much safer passage, and turned New York into the port that it is today.
Well, let's go back in time and try it out.
Here we go.
Let's see how it goes.
We're being lowered down to the next lock, and doing so in style.
In the 100 years, we were probably just 2 of the first 50 people to ride through here on a replica boat. So we recreated history.
We recreated history, and wow, thank you for letting me do this.
First few in 100 years, yep.
Letting me do this and letting me share it with you guys.
If you've seen my series, you know that I can't pass up ice cream or beer. And luckily, just up from the Flight of 5 Locks, there's a super cool ice cream shop with handmade, surprising flavors. If you can't decide what to get the Flight. This allows you to sample a small scoop of all the flavors on offer that day. I'm heading further down the Empire State Trail to Rochester, another city where economic growth was spurred by the Erie Canal. We're hopping back on the Empire State Trail, which runs alongside the canal in charming Fairport, a Rochester suburb where Rochester Accessible Adventures, an organization headed by Anita O'Brien, is helping people with disabilities get outside and enjoy area trails.
It's important that everyone has access to health and wellness, and quality of life, and so often people with disabilities and medical conditions, that door just gets shut on them automatically.
So changing lives through this and getting people outdoors. Well, I'm excited to get out on the trail.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm riding out with a group that includes Dr. Craig Lending.
Craig, how did you get into this?
I had a spinal cord injury about 4 years ago. Ended up not being able to do most of the things that I did. I've known about Rochester Accessible Adventures for a long time. My wife and I have come down and kayaked and come down and bike ride, and which I just couldn't do before. This RAA just had an online auction. I bid on some adaptive fencing lessons, so I'm going to take those too.
Okay. That's so neat. One thing leads to another, and then when you realize you have the strength to do this, you do that and that and that, and move forward.
Right. And that's one of the big things is having the activity, but also getting the exercise, and the fact that I can do it with my wife as well, too.
Just down the street from the trail, I'm stopping to take a break and also see how locals are reusing many of the historic buildings that remain from the area's industrial past. Iron Smoke Distillery is housed in a warehouse with buildings dating back to Civil War times. Former rock and roller Tommy Brunette founded Iron Smoke. Among other accolades, he was the touring guitar player for the 80s band Modern English, and he's letting me taste whiskey straight from the barrel.
It's called a thief.
What?
The thing he pulls it out with you, it's called a thief.
Oh, that's funny. So we're stealing some whiskey here.
Yep, a little bit.
Cool. I feel like you guys have a renegade personality here, so this really fits in line with what we're doing today.
You got to know the rules to break them, so we break them pretty much on a daily basis.
Obviously got a lot of barrels.
Yeah, we have a lot of barrels, 1,200 right now sitting here, but they come in and out. So it's a good vibe. And when we opened up the other side, one of my friends said, I don't think I'm crazy, but I think the room's happy again because there was nothing here. I think we brought something back to life that's been really amazing.
So interesting to me that you have all of these old factories and industrial age things in this area that you're then repurposing and bringing back to life.
We love guests like you coming, and this is a really big deal for a little distillery in Fairport, New York along the canal.
Sounds like you're getting pretty big.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
I heard Jimmy Fallon was just here, huh?
Yeah, our friend Damien Mulconnery from closer to the canal, he's really good friends with them.
Sounds like we're in good company, visiting this cool modern distillery in this building which has stood the test of time.
120 proof smooth, right?
Though.
Just down from Iron Smoke, Faircraft Brewhouse has brought German Pilsners to this old industrial complex.
To have a craft brewery in the old American can factory is just a great location to start with. Cheers.
Cheers.
Not far down the road, I'm meeting up with another portion of the trail alongside the Erie Canal in Pittsford. But this time, I'm exploring by water. I'm taking a tour on the Sam Patch, a replica of an 1800s packet boat, with Wyatt Doremus as my guide.
Well, we're riding right beside the Empire State Trail, and since we're taking this entire journey, this is a little bit of a faster and different way to experience it.
This is a packet boat. Packet boats took people, line boats took goods, and this, instead of having an 88 horsepower engine back there, would have had 2 mules. They'd have a rope attached from here to the front end of the boat over to the tow path. And we'd be moving along at a steady 3 miles an hour, or at least as fast as the mules are willing to go.
So we would not have the breeze on a packet boat in the 1800s that we're getting today.
There are some accounts of people, particularly some English travelers, who remarked on just how fragrant this was. Both inside and out. That's why frequently people like to travel on the tops of the boats.
Many school children in New York State and beyond learn a song about the canal that dates back to the early 1900s. Low bridge, everybody down. It harkens back to a time when passengers riding atop these packet boats would have to get down from the boat's roof when passing under low bridges. There are a few variations on the lyrics, and Wyatt sings one version.
I've got a mule, her name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker and a good old pal. 15 miles on the Erie Canal.
In another nod to canal-side buildings getting repurposed and refurbished, I'm making a stop at one of the craft breweries located on the Old Canal and Trail. 7-Story Brewing is housed in an 1850s home atop the Great Embankment section of the Erie Canal. If wine at sunset is more your speed, stop by second-generation-owned Casa Larga, where ice wine is made using traditional methods by Andrea Coloratoro O'Neill and her family. We're learning about more history along the trail in Newark, where I stopped for a local coffee before meeting Mark DeCracker, who runs a nonprofit called Mural Mania. We're walking by the canal to learn about one of the murals his organization has created to preserve area history and help local veterans and young people.
Newark, New York was the rose capital of the world, and if you don't preserve that history, people will forget about it.
In the 1900s, Jackson and Perkins put Newark on the map for its roses, which were sold across the nation and drew crowds to Newark each spring.
I read about you, and I saw that you're working with a number of veterans, and that your projects, these murals that the veterans are taking part in helping to paint, are really also serving as therapy.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to meet later one of our artists, Corey Reynolds. He's was in Iraq in 2003.
Community, history, therapy, and art.
You can't beat it.
I'm checking out a mural focused on Erie Canal history with veteran Corey Reynolds.
Working on the E56 mural. It depicts the old lock before the new Erie Barge Canal was up and running.
So you're depicting a lot of history here. And
And I really enjoy doing it because I have PTSD. I come in here when my mind starts to wander, and it just kind of relaxes me.
Let's get to it.
Okay.
We've got a big mural to paint here.
Excited.
Yeah.
Corey's letting me help, but I don't want to mess up his work.
Where's Bob Ross when you need him?
If you got a lot going on in the real world, you could come in here and you can paint, put yourself in a little spot, and that's your little spot that you have to worry about. Nothing else. I'm glad to have you putting a little spot on there because that's one spot I don't have to worry about and I can move on.
I'll let you come back and fix it up after I leave.
I'm stopping at Green Lake State Park to go kayaking on its emerald-colored lake with park specialist James Boyd. If there's one thing I know about filming a travel TV show, it's that the weather doesn't always cooperate. Our first attempt to head out is met with a lot of rain.
And it's pouring.
It's going.
It's pouring.
This is perfect.
All right.
So we decide to go inside and wait it out. Thankfully, the skies clear up and we can head back out. The lake is 195 feet deep, which is really deep for a lake of its size. It was carved out by melting glaciers of the last ice age.
Green Lake is a meromictic lake.
How many lakes like this are there in North America?
Yeah, so in North America, there's really only 30.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a rare phenomena.
That is so cool.
A little jewel along the trail. The Empire State Trail passes through cities, towns, and natural areas. To understand more about the history of the Erie Canal, I'm stopping at the Chittenango Landing Canal Boat Museum to meet with Pamela Vittorio. This museum shares a replica of a 19th century 3-bay dry dock where canal boats would be repaired along the old Erie Canal.
Pamela, this was sort of like a rest stop back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I would say it was like, on the thruway where you can stop and get repairs done and gas up. So your mules, your engines, would rest over there in the mule stable. If your boat was heavy, medium, or a lighter boat, that's what you'd be doing. You'd be getting your boat repaired.
What time period would this have been active?
So as soon as you cross the bridge up there, it's 1818 at that bridge, and then you cross back to 1856, and, you can experience what people actually experienced here when they were living here.
What do I need to get repaired today? Let's see. I came in on a car, so.
So your Laker boat, like the one we have over there, could have been fixed in the deep bay. Original boats would have been 96 feet long, if you can imagine. So that's as big as an 18-wheeler, I think.
Kind of like our GMC.
Right, exactly.
Unlike our modern vehicle, early canal boats were made of wood and had a limited lifespan. Canal boats often served as floating homes for families. And as more and more people came to work and live along the Erie Canal, a whole new culture sprung up around its waters.
So then the Laker would house a family.
It's pretty spacious.
It is.
That's pretty spacious when you think about that time period and the accommodations that people would have had back then.
Right.
We're heading towards Albany to bike along the trail. But first, I'm taking a stroll around a state historic site with David Brooks. We're getting a better sense of just how narrow the original canal was and future improvements that were made as traffic outgrew the original waterway.
This is the original canal, and it's much narrower than I would have imagined. Standing inside, you can see it's really not that wide at all.
Yeah, so the original canal was only just slightly larger than the barges that they decided to put in there. So you have about a 15-foot wide canal, 90-foot long lock. But during that enlargement, they decided they're going to make it much wider, double chamber those locks, and create a much more convenient and smoother transition of barges.
This section remains here today because it was a feeder for the new part of the canal when they started to widen it, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the original crossing of the canal through the Schoharie Creek went through the water of the creek through a slack water dam system. And that was highly inefficient, especially after a rainstorm, so they decided to build the aqueduct over the creek, and it was it was noted as one of the largest improvements on the enlargement era of the canal.
This whole thing is just such a feat of engineering.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the only sites where you can see the remnants of the old Erie Canal. A few steps away, we also see the Schoharie Creek Aqueduct, which dates back to 1845 and was part of that enlarged Erie Canal system.
The great thing about New Yorkers is they know how to build things, and then they know how to make them even bigger and better.
This historic site also shows travelers a typical canal store and old lock at Yankee Hill. Travelers can soak in this history by camping at Yankee Hill, at ready-made campsites, or by hopping on the Empire State Trail by foot or bike. I'm biking a flat, paved section of the trail with the trail's director, cycling enthusiast Andy Beers.
How much of the trail is paved versus unpaved?
So, New York City to Albany to Buffalo is 550 miles. 85% of that is off-road trail, and probably 3/4 of that is paved. And then when in the western part of the state, you get into some stone dust sections. Hudson Valley section's entirely paved, and this section is mainly paved. You get into the western part of the state, you get into the stone dust, so.
Much of the trail is along rail trails, historic railroad beds which have been repurposed into trails. These generally flat areas are accessible for cyclists of varying abilities, including people with mobility challenges. While I'm hopscotching to different sections of the trail, some people do ride for multiple days, staying at campsites, nearby hotels, and B&Bs. To juxtapose trail sections further, I'm heading along the trail through Mohawk Harbor and into New York's capital, Albany. I'm riding with Allison Joseph and members of the Capital Region chapter of Black Girls Do Bike, which supports a community of women of color who share a passion for cycling.
Allison, how did you get into biking in general?
I'm from Guyana. Cycling is a mode of transportation. If you had a bicycle, that was a privilege.
As often happens, life got in the way of Allison's leisure time as an adult, but a cycling event to raise money for the American Diabetes Association got Allison back into cycling.
It was great, but then I realized there was nobody there that looked like me. I saw 1 or 2 black men, but honestly, they looked like professionals. And I thought, there is no way that I am the only woman of color that loves to cycle. So I decided that I was going to try to find them.
Allison found the Black Girls Do Bike organization online. It has chapters throughout the country, but didn't have one in her home area of Albany. So Allison started a chapter, which now has 130 members.
I started riding for exercise, but I realized there was an added benefit. It was a stress reliever.
Yes.
You know, so that's why it helps when I ride along the river, because that smell of the river, I don't know, it does something to me. You know, isn't that crazy?
No, it makes total sense. I think that's, the earth is good for you.
It is, it is.
Yeah.
The trail here runs right alongside the Hudson River and the east end of the Erie Canal. We're heading back north outside of historic Saratoga Springs to take in a unique section of the trail in the village of Schuylerville.
So this section of the Empire State Trail is unique in that it overlaps with the Champlain Canalway Trail. And right now, we're actually riding along the original Champlain Canal towpath, where the mules would pull the barges along the canal.
It's a nice wide trail so that we can kind of ride side by side, and it's now unpaved because we've been on we're taking a number of portions of the trail that are paved, so this is different.
Yes, this is a great stone dust trail.
A 60-mile canal joining Lake Champlain to the Hudson River. The Champlain Canal opened in 1823, 2 years before the Erie Canal.
Champlain Canal Lock C5.
So cool to see that paddle boat coming through.
Constructed between 1908 and 1911, Champlain Canal Lock 5 lifts boats 18 feet. Further on, we ride into Hudson Crossing Park to another spot with history.
The Dix Bridge is really the cornerstone of Hudson Crossing Park. And it's not only the place that the Empire and Champlain Canalway trail systems cross, but it's also the site of where the British crossed the Hudson River in 1777 on their way to their historic loss at the Battle of Saratoga.
Back in the village, there's a historic home with Broadway ties that I've got to see.
Everybody knows Hamilton.
Yes, and if you remember from the musical, the reference to the Schuyler sisters going upstate, this is where they were going. Their father, Philip Schuyler, had to rebuild this house after the British burned it on their way to the Saratoga battlefield.
Locals visiting Schuylerville don't just visit for history and outdoor adventure. They come too for arts and culture. We take it in on a walk to a local watering hole for an end-of-the-day reward with the locals. I'm heading south to the Hudson Valley to the town of Rosendale to walk with Lisa Berger along the Empire State Trail along another historic railroad line.
Rosendale, at one time, mined and manufactured cement, and that cement was used in a lot of buildings that you know, like the Empire State Building and the Brooklyn Bridge. And this particular line was used to move commercial freight. And by the early 70s, much of the commercial business that this rail line had done had gone by the wayside.
I think it's neat that we have these old rail trails in our country in general, so people can come out and enjoy the great outdoors in spaces that would have been maybe neglected or kind of left to the wayside.
It really is.
We cross over the Rosendale Trestle Bridge to enjoy views of the village of Rosendale from above.
How high up are we?
We're 150 feet up, overlooking the Rondout Creek, the little town of Rosendale, in all of its charm.
Less than 15 minutes down the road in New Paltz, we explore a location that you may recognize from the movies.
Lisa, I think I recognize this bridge, and it's kind of freaking me out.
I bet it is. This is the bridge from the movie A Quiet Place, that famous scene with Emily Blunt and her child running across it.
We should actually be very quiet right now.
Yes. Shh.
The Empire State Trail is also accessible in downtown New Paltz by historic Huguenot Street. Here, 18th century homes and structures that were built by Huguenot settlers fleeing persecution form a 10-acre National Landmark Historic District. Just 30 minutes down the road, I'm continuing my rails theme along the Empire State Trail, where the trail runs along the world's longest elevated pedestrian bridge at Walkway over the Hudson. Jeff Lutanowitz takes me on a walk along this 1.28-mile pedestrian bridge that's 212 feet above the Hudson River.
To the south of us is the Mid-Hudson Bridge, and to the north of us is the Catskill Mountains. And that's just a view that everybody comes here for.
Beautiful view, and I have to say, this guy's transportation is my favorite that I've seen all day today.
A great place to end my journey less than 2 hours from New York City. And while I could take the trail all the way home, for now, I've decided to stay just a little bit longer.
We've explored a big portion of the Empire State Trail, and there's still so much more to see. So I'm gonna take one more walk, and I'll see you next time on Travels with Darley. You were camped out in here?
No, but we had to go, yes, literally, for the last 40 years. This is what...
And before that, had survived jumping off of Niagara Falls twice.
Why did he jump off of all those waterfalls?
That was his job. He found out when he was working at a mill in New Jersey that people would pay him to do that.
Sounds like my job.
Love it.
We can't seem to like...
But there's sun. There's sun right up there.
I've never seen a fat, unicycle.